Now water is trading on the stock market, much like other commodities. So securing access to water is something that we all need to be very, very diligent about and paying close attention to and opposing wherever we can.
Hello. Thank you so much for checking out Earth Care. I'm Sarah Christie. Today we're on our way to Wellington County to meet Arlene Slocombe, the executive director of the Wellington Water Watchers. This is an organization that was founded in 2007 and is doing such crucial work. They are working to restore, protect, conserve our drinking water. Now, you might have read things on social media, heard things, maybe even signed a petition that say things like keep our water public versus private or say no to big water. You might also know that there are currently communities across Ontario that don't have access to clean drinking water. They're on boil water advisories. Arlene Slocombe is joining EarthCare to talk about what all of that means, how it's all connected, and what we can do to help. Arlene Slocombe, Executive Director of the Wellington Water Watchers. Thank you so much for sharing your Saturday morning with me and being on Earth here. It's such a pleasure to finally meet you. Can we just start with who are the Wellington Water Watchers?
We were a group of just citizens in the Guelph area that formed like around a kitchen table, as so many things do, in response to a couple of significant water threats that were happening in our community. And we started gathering actually about right around this time, 15 years ago. So it was back in 2007. And at the moment, there were two kind of major threats that had just come onto some of our radar. And one was the situation of aggregate impact at this quarry known at the time and still sort of colloquially known as the Dolime Quarry. It had been recognized that there was a breach through the protective layer over our aquifer by their excessive blasting below the water table. And that posed and continues to pose a very direct threat to the quality and health of the groundwater locally. So that was on our radar at the time. And the other thing that was on our radar, none of us I think it was just nobody really knew. And all of a sudden we realized that this previously small mom and pop water bottling operation that was just down the road in Aberfoyle, had a big Nestle sign on it. So Nestle, I don't know how many, that was the first time it sort of came forward that, oh, wait, this multinational corporation now has their national headquarters in Aberfoyle at this well and are extracting water from that well and another well in Hillsburg, which is also in Wellington County, thus the Wellington Water Watchers. In the spring of 2007, we recognized that their permit renewal was coming up. And then through the process in Ontario, whenever there's a new application or a renewal for a permit to take water, there's a public comment period. And so we organized very quickly to have our community submit comments of opposition to this renewal permit. And interestingly, some folks we talked with at the ministry prior to that, I think on any of their previous postings, maybe like a maximum of a couple hundred comments. Well, within a month or two, we had over 8,000 comments submitted.
That's great.
And it was clearly it was hitting a nerve and touching a nerve locally. So what has evolved over time is that folks have recognized that we have an effective way of campaigning. And so we are actually in the process of dropping Wellington from our name now, and we'll just be the Water Watchers. We're in the middle of that rebranding because what has happened, and we decided to just roll with it, is that other grassroots groups and communities across the region, across kind of southern and central Ontario, that are working to oppose some sort of threat to their water in their community have reached out for campaign support. Wow. And we have begun being that regional support hub, and we support many campaigns now through our method of campaigning. We work with their leadership team and are supporting at the grassroots level so we can build a collective movement of people who are working to protect water in the area.
You said it right there. Talk about grassroots. And for anyone sitting at home listening or watching this, going, well, does one person count? This is a prime example of the power of that movement. Now, you mentioned Nestle, and I recently just moved out of Kitchener-Waterloo, whereas Alora's right there. And if you go to Alora, there are signs everywhere that say boycott Nestle. And one of the campaigns on the Wellington Water Watchers website right now is say no to Nestle. Now, the only reason I really know a bit about this is because of going to Alora and seeing these signs and going, well, what's going on? And sitting down and doing some research. So can you speak to um, some of the risks involved with these big water companies like Nestle when it comes to our local water sources? Because I don't know that that's a common conversation that enough of us are having.
Yeah, so interesting. The way that Alora became involved in this is that there is a well located just, it's on Middlebrook Road. It's just a little outside of Elora, and Nestle purchased that well. I'm trying to remember what year now. It might have been 2017 or 2018. Can't recall exactly, but they purchased that well. And interestingly, at the time, uh, Center Wellington, which is the region that encompasses Elora and Fergus and that area, Center Wellington, we're doing a whole lot of groundwater studies, and we're recognizing with the growing population of those communities through the Places to Grow Act that the community itself was needing to find additional water just for the requirements of the community. And you know, um, they had their eyes on this potential well as well to supply and be the source of water for the community. And in that moment, Nestle sort of scooped in under uh, like a private corporate number and purchased the well, um, knowing that the township itself was looking and buying. So there was sort of like almost, arguably it was like a bit of an outbidding kind of scenario. And once again, so this organized and rallied people in Elora to get very vocal on it. And we worked very closely with the community in Elora, and still do, to build that into part of our Say No to Nestle campaign. That community has been so vocal, and we've done a lot of really great work in that area, and have effectively influenced the policies such that now there's a requirement that the host of any water taking permit for the purposes of bottled water need to be a willing host. And through our successful pressuring work that we did in that community, the township of Center Wellington is not a willing host. So we think we've effectively capped the potential for Nestle to be able to extract water from that well. But we're still keeping our eye on the whole thing. The piece around why we need to pay particular attention to water, like acquiring rights to water permits right now, is that, and I believe as a direct response from our pressuring and our pressuring in collaboration with communities across across the globe, and very concentratedly across North America. We worked in coalitions with groups across North America opposing Nestle in their community, and in collaboration with folks from Six Nations who, 1 hour south of here, have boiled water advisories because of lack of access to potable water. And meanwhile, these multinational corporations are extracting water for profit on treaty lands. And so through our collaboration with all of those, Nestle actually sold their North American operations. So they've sold it now to a private equity firm called Blue Triton,
Right.
which is an interesting response to like the pressure. It doesn't negate the need to stay really concerned about this, because at the same time, perhaps you've heard this, now water is trading on the stock market, much like other commodities. So securing access to water is something that we all need to be very, very diligent about and paying close attention to and opposing wherever we can. So interestingly, right now, Triton, the company that owns it, which I think, you have to, we've been doing some research into the ownership structure. Triton is like one of these funds that usually comes in and purchase it through a heavily debt leveraged scenario, and works, right now they're working with Metropolis, which is a marketing firm. And the case study that we've reviewed was, they did that with Twinkies many years ago. And what happened essentially was, like, they did this remarketing, rebranding, and then quickly sold off shares. So like, they're not in it for the long run. They're not in it for any kind of like stewardship. They're kind of in it, as we probably all can speculate, for the top dollar. And now that things are trading on the stock market, we need to be diligent. So interestingly, in the last little while, we have noted that Triton is developing and working in partnership with the Weather Network. And the Weather Network, who has in their value statements uh, values that advocate for working to oppose the effects of climate change and are working towards climate mitigation. They have now partnered with Triton to say that while chaos is on the rise, you should be prepared by having a case bottled water in your home. And they're partnering with Triton in this way, which is horrific.
Yeah.
And so this is where some of our energy is going to go to next, in terms of like raising that alarm bell and letting North America know this is like disaster capitalism at its, so blatantly, the way that, it's marketing for climate chaos by a company that by their actions are increasing climate chaos, and then the
Right.
solution is to buy their product. So yeah, it's really, really kind of like, I don't know, alarming where we're going with all of this.
So many things you just said there are outrageous to wrap your head around. The fact that, people are bidding on water when, like you said, within driving distance of where both you and I are right now, there are people with boil water advisories. So if you were to, because I truly think this is something that needs to be a conversation for everyone, and beyond living in Elora, I didn't know much about this. So if you were to just, it's not a simple concept at all, but to simplify how a big water company is leaving communities without access to clean water, what do you want people to know about that?
Yeah, this is a really good question. And interestingly, we did a poll back in 2018 where we, our one of our intentions is to completely stop allowing permits for bottling water permits to take water in our system were, I think, like originally designed in the idea that like communities need water for, life and for living. And maybe, like hospitals need water for all sorts of things. Some industry that uses water as an ingredient needs water, agriculture needs water. And in all of those cases, there's many, many, many things that can be done to do that more efficiently and in a more honoring way of the water that's being used. So, we've got a lot of work to do there, but it was never conceived of to be just take the water and make profit off of it. That was probably never part of the original construction. So we want people to recognize that this is an example of taking advantage of a system that wasn't really part of the intention. And, across the globe, we can see it. We can see that securing access to water, as we're watching the world reeling in the impacts of climate chaos, that access to water is going to be, for those whose pockets are deep. And if we want it to be other than that, then we must get diligent and we must be involved with stopping it wherever we can. At the same time, we need to be embracing and learning about and deepening in our education and responsibilities around, what does it mean to be a treaty person on these lands? Where do our responsibilities lie in equitable access for the things that are not optional? Water is not optional. We all need it for life. So how do we, at the same time as opposing these multinational corporations, also lift up the voices of Indigenous or other marginalized communities who are impacted by the colonial structures that we put in place, such that there is no reliable access to clean, secure water? Like, we need to do both of those in concert. And continuing to just, if folks haven't been aware that this has been going on, I get it. Like, they're good at making it all glossy and look really good. And we need to all step up and learn whatever we can. And that's why I'm really excited about the way our organization has moved into being support for grassroots groups across the area, because whatever challenge they're opposing in their area is connected. And where we can all build together like a whole movement of folks that are becoming aware of these impacts and the way these multinational corporations are just securing access everywhere, that we can have a much more collective voice to oppose it and start to shift things into the direction to be making it an equitable access issue.
I think you just touched on a couple of ways in that answer, but for the rest of us who aren't part of the Wellington Water Watchers or soon to be the Water Watchers, how can we start taking action?
One way is to get onto our mailing list, because we have actions going out all the time that need lots and lots and lots of voices behind it. So you can go to our website, which, by the way, is rather, we're undergoing a website redo at the moment. So our website is kind of like not great. So go to it, but we'll be revealing a new one fairly soon. But you can just subscribe to our list, and then you'll be on our list and you'll get all of the actions that we are recommending. But also just, so that's one way, one simple way. There's a lot of other organizations that we work in concert with all the time: Council of Canadians, Environmental Defense, and the myriad of small community-based groups that are engaging it in their communities. So yeah, I'd say pay attention to what's going on around you. Local is so important. That's where your voice will mean the most. And learn what you can. At the same time, learn what you can about our treaty responsibilities. What treaty do you live in? Who are the original caretakers and stewards of the lands, and what are impacting those communities right in your locale? And how can we together be like building that movement? There's power in numbers, and there's power in people coming together around common goals. And there are so many impacts to groundwater across this nation. Inevitably, they all intersect and overlap with all the other struggles that we may be opposing. So the intersections of like social justice issues and water justice issues they're completely visible to see if you start peeling back the layers. They're completely one and the same. So whether your cause is more related to social justice, that's great. If your cause is more related to environmental justice, then just let's open our eyes to see how those two work in concert and how we can lift each other's voices up.